Jungkook rewrote his lyrics minutes before the show. ARMY think it was about Jimin. He's changing the lyrics, someone stop him. Taehyung shouted, bursting through the backstage corridor, his voice slicing through the dense air like a blade. The dressing room smelled of sweat, hairspray, and something electric, adrenaline maybe. Jungkook sat hunched over a coffee-stained notepad, his pen scratching violently against the paper. The usual calm behind his eyes was gone, replaced by a storm that even he couldn't name. The digital clock on the vanity blinked red. 0008. 8 minutes until the world saw him again. 8 minutes until he did something irreversible. Behind him, the TV monitor buzzed with the echo of the arena, screams of tens of thousands of armies pulsing like a second heartbeat. His fingers trembled as he ripped the original lyric sheet in half and shoved the rewritten lines into the mic stand folder. The lyrics were raw, honest, maybe too honest. "Taehyung, don't do this," whispered Youngwon, the youngest sound tech, barely older than a trainee. His eyes darted toward the hallway, afraid of being seen siding with chaos. "The producers will kill you." "They can try," Jungkook replied, voice low, eyes never leaving the page. "This is my voice. Tonight it's mine." He stood, taller than usual, not in height, but in resolve. He adjusted his in-ear monitors, the stage lights already casting an ominous glow through the doorway. His steps toward the tunnel felt like a countdown, each footfall another beat toward implosion. It had started a week ago. A late-night voice message from Jimin, just breathing at first, then silence, then a broken whisper, "I can't do this anymore." The words never left him. Backstage now, the crew scrambled, unaware of what was about to unfold. Yoongi stood at the mixing desk, brows furrowed as he noticed the file names didn't match. "Where's the original backing track?" he asked. "Jungkook sent a last-minute revision," said the engineer. "Didn't you approve it?" Yoongi's eyes narrowed. He hadn't. On stage, the LED screen dimmed, a single spotlight dropping like a guillotine. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer echoed, "give it up for Jeon jungkook." The arena erupted. But what followed wasn't the song listed in the setlist. The beat was slower, bleaker. The melody wrapped around the silence like barbed wire. Then his voice, clear and jagged. "You said I'm free, but I still feel chained. You smiled, but your eyes carried rain. I bled in silence, you danced in the dark. Now my song begins where you tore me apart." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones shook. Live streams glitched under the weight of disbelief. Backstage, Jimin had frozen mid-step, the laminate pass swinging around his neck. He hadn't planned to come. He told himself he wouldn't. But something pulled him here tonight, a tether he thought he'd severed long ago. Jungkook's eyes scanned the crowd, but he wasn't looking at anyone. He was singing to a ghost, a memory, or perhaps a promise. "I told you not to follow your heart," Jimin had once said, "because mine doesn't know where it's going." The song ended with a crescendo of strings, then silence so deep it pressed into bone. No one clapped. Not yet. They didn't know if it was over. They didn't know what they'd just heard. Jungkook dropped the mic, walked off stage. The door slammed behind him like a closing chapter. In the hallway, Jimin waited. And for the first time in months, their eyes met, not as idols, not as legends, but as two broken boys who once promised to never let go. Jungkook's chest heaved, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you hear it?" Jimin nodded, every word. Outside, the crowd began to chant his name again. But inside, in that narrow backstage hallway, time held its breath. Neither of them moved, neither of them spoke. But something had changed. And nothing would ever be the same again. The corridor was too quiet for what had just happened. Jungkook's breath was still erratic, as though the stage had followed him. His heart hadn't come down, still stuck in the chorus. Jimin stood motionless in front of him, his face unreadable, the kind of blank only someone trained to mask everything could wear convincingly. "What the hell was that?" Jimin's voice broke first, low, controlled, almost calm. But his fingers clenched the lanyard around his neck until his knuckles turned white. "You heard it," Jungkook answered, but there was no triumph in his voice. No vindication, only exhaustion. I meant every word. You sang it in front of the entire world. Jungkook's mouth twitched. They deserved to know the truth. The truth, Jimin took a step closer. You call that the truth. You think bleeding all over the stage makes you honest. You think hiding behind silence makes you loyal. The hallway walls trembled with the intensity in their words. Every staff member in earshot suddenly had somewhere else to be. Phones were silenced. Eyes were averted. Everyone knew better than to get in the way of two forces mid-collision. Jimin laughed, bitter and quiet. You think you're brave because you changed a few lyrics last minute. You think that makes you free. I think I'm done lying, Jungkook replied, his voice cracking. To myself, to the fans, to you. Jimin's jaw tensed, his eyes finally showing a flicker of something real. You had no right to use our story like that. And you had no right to end it without even saying goodbye. There it was, the wound torn open like a stage curtain. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The air buzzed with the echo of old arguments and unspoken things, memories that never quite died. Jimin turned away, running a hand through his hair. You don't know what I was dealing with. You never tried to understand. I tried, Jimin. God, I tried so hard, but you kept shutting me out. Because I was scared, Jimin finally shouted, spinning around. I didn't know how to love you without ruining both our careers, without ruining everything we built. Jungkook stepped forward, voice trembling. And now you've ruined it anyway. You left, Jimin. You disappeared. You let the silence eat us alive. Jimin's eyes shone with something sharp and wet. I thought I was protecting you. I never asked you to. A door creaked open at the far end of the hallway. Taehyung peeked in, then immediately cursed it under his breath and closed it again. Jesus, Yoongi muttered as he passed by moments later, avoiding eye contact. It's like watching the Titanic sink in Dolby Atmos. Still, neither of them moved. Jimin finally leaned back against the wall, rubbing his temples. Why now, Jungkook? Why tonight? Because I knew you'd be here, Jungkook said. I felt it. I don't know how, but I did. And if there was even the smallest chance you'd hear me, I wanted you to know that I'm still standing in that place you left me. A silence settled between them, softer this time, heavy but less sharp. Then Jimin said, almost inaudibly, I shouldn't have come. But you did. Jimin looked at him, really looked this time, past the polished skin and the stage lights into the raw place where Jungkook kept his pain. What now? Jungkook shook his head. I don't know, but I can't keep pretending we were just a phase, that it was all a dream. Is that what the song was for? Jimin asked, his voice low again. To make me feel guilty, to make me crawl back. No, Jungkook said, stepping close enough that the space between them shrank to nothing. To tell you I'm still here, that I never left, no matter how far you ran. A noise cracked through the hallway. A phone vibrated violently in Jimin's pocket. He pulled it out. His screen was flooded with notifications. The hashtags were already trending. Jungkook lyrics. Was it about Jimin? Kookmin truth. Mic drop confession. It's already everywhere, Jimin said, eyes wide, voice caught in disbelief. You just told them. Jungkook didn't flinch. They already knew, maybe not the details, but the feeling. They felt it before we did. Jimin scrolled through the comments with shaking hands. Some were vicious. Others were poetic, flooded with tears and hearts. But the name Jimin was on nearly every screen capture, every lyric breakdown, every speculative thread. This will destroy us, he whispered. Or free us, Jungkook said. Jimin looked like he wanted to run, but he didn't. Instead, he closed his phone, slowly, carefully, as if that small action could pause time. You still love me? He asked, the words barely there. Jungkook nodded, his voice cracking open like the first chord of a song. I never stopped. Jimin looked away, his throat working hard. He opened his mouth to say something but froze when a security guard ran toward them. You need to come, the guard said breathlessly. Now it's chaos outside. Some fans are crying, some are chanting. Reporters are already surrounding the building, and And what? Jungkook asked. The guard hesitated. There's a leak. Someone just posted a voice recording. It's Jimin. It's his voicemail. Jimin's eyes widened. No. The guard nodded grimly. The one where you said you couldn't do this anymore. Jungkook's blood ran cold. They heard it, the guard said. All of it. Jimin's face lost all color. Who would, how? But Jungkook already knew. There were only 3 people who'd ever had access to that voicemail. Himself, Jimin, and someone they both once trusted. He turned to Jimin, heart hammering. We've been set up. And just like that, the hallway became a battlefield. And the real war had only just begun. You think I leaked it? Jimin's voice cracked like dry ice, cold and furious, disbelief written in every sharp line of his face. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. The roar from outside had grown louder, as if the fans could feel the tremor under the ground before the building itself collapsed. Flashing lights from the reporters' cameras stained the hallway walls like gunfire. The sound of thousands screaming his name was now more terrifying than comforting. I don't know, Jungkook said finally, the words scraping out like glass. But it sure as hell wasn't me. Jimin took a step forward, eyes burning. You're the one who sang about me in front of the whole damn world. You're the one who dug up the past. You're the one who wanted this out in the open. And now you're pointing fingers at me. I didn't ask for the voicemail to be aired like some sick trophy. Jungkook snapped, heat rising in his chest. Do you even understand what that message did to me? I listened to it on loop for days, Jimin. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. You sounded like you were dying and you never called again. Jimin looked away, jaw clenched so tight it seemed like it might snap. Because I didn't think I deserved to. The sentence hit Jungkook like a slap. I thought I broke you, Jimin continued, his voice quieter, shaking. I thought walking away would make it easier for both of us, that if I stayed, I'd ruin everything. The group, our image, you. You were wrong, Jungkook said, his voice hoarse. You leaving didn't save me, it hollowed me out. The silence between them grew thick again, like smoke after an explosion. Then a voice cut through it, a new one. You really think no one would notice your little confession show, came a sarcastic drawl. They both turned. Standing there, leaning against the wall like he owned it, was Yi Hyun, former creative director, trusted by everyone until he was. What the hell are you doing here? Jimin demanded. Yi Hyun smirked. Just enjoying the opera. That was a hell of a performance, Jungkook. Vulnerable, sexy, strategic. Cut the bullshit, Jungkook growled. You leaked the voicemail, didn't you? I might have, he shrugged, casual and venomous. Didn't think it'd go viral that fast. Honestly, I was just pissed you removed my choreo for your solo. That was months ago, Jungkook snapped. And yet here we are, Yi Hyun said smoothly. You humiliate me in front of the whole team, and now you think you can pull some tragic love story on stage and get away with it. You're insane. I'm opportunistic, Yi Hyun corrected. There's a difference. You had no right to touch that voicemail, Jimin said, stepping forward, his fists trembling. It wasn't yours. Yi Hyun's expression turned cold. You left it on an unsecured line. You think I didn't know how to pull your private logs? You both were so busy pretending nothing was going on, you forgot who handled your security. Jungkook felt sick. The world was spinning. The words he'd sung tonight suddenly felt like a trap he'd walked into with his eyes wide open. You ruined everything, Jimin said, stepping closer. You put our private lives on display. You endangered our fans, our families, our careers. No, Yi Hyun cut him off, smiling with poisoned sweetness. You did that when you fell in love with him. A punch landed before anyone saw it coming. Jungkook's fist smashed into Yi Hyun's face with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The man stumbled back, blood already streaming from his nose. Say it again, Jungkook growled, chest heaving. Say it again and I'll break more than your face. Guards were rushing down the hallway now. Namjoon was behind them, his face a mix of horror and fury. What the hell is going on? Jungkook, Jimin, step back. Jimin's body was shaking, not from fear but rage, raw, untethered searing. He leaked the voicemail. Namjoon's jaw tightened. Is that true? I'll be pressing charges, Jungkook said, his voice dark. And if the company tries to sweep this under the rug. We won't, Namjoon cut him off. I swear to you we won't. But Jungkook wasn't listening. His blood was pounding in his ears. He turned and stormed down the hallway, brushing past everyone. Jimin hesitated for a heartbeat, then ran after him. They burst out into the back lot, the night air slicing against their skin. Sirens blared somewhere distant, or maybe in their heads. Jungkook stopped only when he reached the edge of the loading dock, chest heaving. Where are you going? Jimin asked. I don't know, Jungkook said. Anywhere that doesn't have cameras, microphones, or snakes in designer jackets. Jimin approached slowly. You hit him. Would have done worse if they hadn't stopped me. I know. They stood in silence again, both staring into the black void of the night. The city buzzed around them, too alive, too loud. I never wanted any of this, Jimin said finally. I just wanted to protect you. You did the opposite. I know. Jungkook closed his eyes, pain crawling up his spine. So what now? Jimin's voice broke when he said, I don't know, but I can't lose you again. Jungkook looked at him, and this time there was no anger, only grief. You already did. Jimin's face crumpled, and for the first time he looked like a boy, not an idol, not a legend, not a scandal. Just a boy, terrified of losing the only person who ever saw him. Jungkook turned away. I need time, he whispered. Jimin didn't stop him this time. And as the door slammed shut behind Jungkook, the night swallowed them both again, leaving only the hum of neon and a love that had bled too far. And deep in the recesses of a forgotten inbox, another file blinked awake, unopened, unleaked, a video. And it had Jimin's name on it. Rain began to fall in a fine mist over Seoul, casting silver streaks against the city's darkened glass towers. Somewhere in the thrum of that restless city, inside an anonymous hotel suite high above the noise, Jungkook sat alone, his phone untouched for hours, turned face down on the table beside him. A room service tray lay cold by the window, untouched. The television played a muted music channel, flickering blue light across his face. He hadn't spoken to anyone since he left the arena. Not Namjoon, not Taehyung, not even Jimin. Especially not Jimin. The knock came at 2:13 a.m. Soft, hesitant. He didn't move. Another knock, harder this time. I know you're in there, came Taehyung's voice, muffled but certain. Open the door or I'll kick it down. Jungkook sighed and rose. He opened the door slowly, expecting another intervention. But Taehyung wasn't alone. Yoongi stood beside him, expression unreadable, arms crossed. His eyes flicked over Jungkook's face, scanning the exhaustion carved into it. Get dressed, Yoongi said. For what? Jungkook muttered. You're going to want to see this. They said nothing more on the drive. The car was silent except for the low hum of tires on wet asphalt. Yoongi sat in the front seat, scrolling through something on his phone, expression grim. Taehyung leaned forward from the back, voice low. We didn't want to show you, until we were sure it was real. What? Jungkook asked, his pulse already quickening. Yoongi turned around, holding up his phone. This. He pressed play. The video was blurry, shot through what looked like tinted glass, security footage maybe. At first it was hard to make out the figures, but then the shapes sharpened. The hallway was familiar. The timestamp matched the night before the leak. And the voice was unmistakable. You sure this will get him to finally talk? Came a male voice, arrogant, smug. Then Yehyun stepped into frame, holding a USB. Once the world hears Jimin's little breakdown, he'll either run or confess. Either way, I win. Jungkook's breath stopped. And the song, the other voice asked. I've already tampered with his lyrics folder, swapped in a dummy version with the original. He won't notice until the last second. Laughter, cold and venomous. I gave them a love story, Yehyun said, smiling into the security cam like he knew it was watching. Now I'll give them a tragedy. The screen went dark. Jungkook couldn't speak. He couldn't even blink. Taehyung leaned forward, resting a hand on his shoulder. It was never just about you and Jimin. He planned all of this. Yoongi's jaw was tight. We found this buried in a backup server. He must have thought no one would check after the arena's security logs were wiped. Jungkook exhaled, slow and hollow. He wrote the lyrics. Taehyung nodded. The first version, not yours, not the one you rewrote, but the file he switched in, it was full of lines you'd never write. Confessional, raw, the kind that cause a scandal even without context. Jungkook rubbed his hands over his face, trying to process it. He wanted me to burn. He wanted both of you to burn, Yoongi said. They pulled up in front of a private building, unmarked but familiar. BIGHIT's Crisis HQ. Inside, the lights were already on. Namjoon was packing. Jimin stood near the far wall, arms crossed, his face pale and tight, but his eyes locked immediately onto Jungkook's the second he walked in. You saw it, Jimin asked. Jungkook nodded. Something shifted between them, wordless and deep. A silent acknowledgement of pain not caused by each other, but twisted into a weapon by someone else. Namjoon exhaled and gestured to the screen behind him. There's more. A second video, shorter. This time, a recording from Yihyun's laptop webcam, likely hacked during his arrest earlier that evening. He was speaking to someone off-screen. Don't act like you're innocent. You knew this would happen. You signed off on the setup. If I go down, you go down with me. A new voice replied, cold, female. I'm not going down. You are. Jungkook froze. That's Min Seo-hyun, Yoongi whispered. Head of public relations. Jimin's mouth dropped open. She was supposed to protect us, Jungkook muttered. Namjoon's eyes were like steel. She's been manipulating narratives for months, leaking misinformation, staging fake fan accounts, stirring up controversies to boost visibility. Visibility, Jungkook echoed. Clicks, streams, outrage, Yoongi said. Scandal sells faster than sincerity. And we were the product, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook turned to him. They played us against each other. Jimin's voice broke, and we let them. No one spoke. Namjoon finally cleared his throat. We go public with this, expose everything, but we need to be united. Every statement, every word has to be real. Yoongi looked at Jungkook. Can you handle that? Jungkook didn't hesitate. Yes. Then he turned to Jimin. But not without you. Jimin looked like he might fall apart, but he didn't. He stepped forward, close enough that their foreheads almost touched. I should have fought for you, he whispered. You still can, Jungkook said. That night, a storm rolled over Seoul. The headlines exploded by dawn. We stand with Jungkook and Jimin. Expose the truth. Love is not a scandal. Big hit leaks. Army didn't waver. They trended the truth louder than the lies. News anchors stammered. Companies scrambled. And Jungkook and Jimin. They walked hand in hand into the fire. This time together. The moment Jungkook and Jimin appeared at the emergency press conference, the air in the room turned electric. Dozens of reporters, all primed to feast, raised their cameras like weapons, the clicking of shutters rapid and ruthless. The room had been cleared of executives. This wasn't a corporate-controlled statement. It was personal, raw, dangerous, the way truths usually are. Jungkook stepped up to the microphone first, chest rising and falling as if the weight of the last few weeks were finally forcing their way through his lungs. Jimin stood a step behind him, silent but present. They hadn't coordinated outfits, yet somehow both wore black, the color of mourning but also defiance. I won't read a prepared statement, Jungkook began, voice low but unwavering, because I'm tired of being told how to speak my truth. A hush fell over the room like a thunderclap. You've all heard the leaked audio. You've seen the edited footage. You've read the rumors, the speculation, the invasive analysis of every glance and silence between me and Jimin. He paused, jaw clenched. But what you haven't heard is consent. Murmurs spread like wildfire. You haven't heard us say you could dissect our pain for clicks. You haven't heard us invite you into the parts of ourselves we never signed away, not to the label, not to the media, and not to fans who forgot we're human. A flash of shudders. A reporter raised her hand, but Jungkook didn't pause. The truth is, Jimin and I were in love. Quietly, fiercely, and yes, secretly. Not because we were ashamed, but because the world has a way of destroying things it doesn't understand. He glanced back. Jimin's eyes shimmered, not tears, but something more dangerous. Pride, fury, relief. We didn't end because it wasn't real, Jungkook continued. We ended because fear wins sometimes, but it doesn't get to win forever. Jimin stepped forward, hand brushing against Jungkook. Not holding, just enough to be seen, just enough to set the room ablaze. Jimin spoke next, voice smoother but taut like piano wire ready to snap. I made mistakes, he admitted. I walked away thinking I was protecting him, but the truth is I was protecting myself, from judgment, from shame, from a world that's quick to love us when we're perfect but quicker to destroy us when we're honest. He took a breath, eyes sweeping the room. They weaponized our silence. They twisted it into scandal. They tried to control our narrative, but we're taking it back. Another reporter, bold, leaned forward. So you're confirming the relationship? Jungkook smiled, not gently. No, we're confirming the war you started without asking if we wanted to fight, and we're ending it, on our terms. Chaos erupted. Flashes, screams of questions. Security rushed forward, but Jungkook and Jimin didn't flinch. They stood there together like the eye of the storm. Later that night, Seoul glowed like it was on fire. The internet shattered under the weight of truth. Some fans wept, some cheered, others cursed, but no one ignored it. The truth was finally louder than the edits. Inside a quiet apartment far from the chaos, Jungkook sat on the kitchen counter, barefoot, hair still damp from a shower. Jimin stood across from him, arms folded, eyes distant. You really dropped a nuke, Jimin muttered. Jungkook smirked. You were holding the second one. Silence. Then Jimin looked up, face unreadable. You still love me? The question was simple, small, but it detonated something in the room. Jungkook's face softened. I never said I stopped. Jimin walked closer, one step at a time until there was no space left. Say it again. Jungkook leaned in, forehead against Jimin's. I love you. Their kiss wasn't soft. It was messy, desperate, the kind that comes after surviving war and still choosing to stay. And when they pulled apart, breathless, Jimin whispered, Then let's stop surviving. Let's start living. But the fire wasn't out. The next morning, Seo Hyun's private emails were leaked. Evidence of payoffs, manipulation, bots created to stir division in the fandom. Headlines changed from idle romance exposed to corporate conspiracy unraveled. And then came the lawsuit. Yi Hyun, now disgraced and in custody, refused to go down alone. His lawyers released documents implicating not just him, but several industry insiders in a scheme involving not just Jungkook and Jimin, but multiple artists, their private lives mined for leverage. The industry was rotting, and the wound had finally burst open. Namjoon called an emergency meeting. We can't just burn the building down without knowing what we're rebuilding, he said, voice heavy. You two started something. Now the world's watching to see if it ends in blood or in change. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Jimin looked at him. No more hiding, Jimin said. No more edits, Jungkook replied. And so they stayed. Not just together, but loud, visible, unapologetic. In the days that followed, they recorded a stripped-down acoustic version of the song that started it all. The real lyrics, the unrevised melody, the way it was meant to be. It broke every streaming record in under 24 hours. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was real. The courtroom lights were too bright, too sterile, like truth itself had been surgically sterilized and placed under a spotlight. Jungkook sat in the witness chair, hands folded tightly in his lap, every muscle in his body coiled. Jimin was just 3 rows behind him, flanked by Yoongi and Taehyung, eyes sharp and unreadable. Across from him stood Seo Hyun's legal team, pristine and brutal, dressed in charcoal suits with smiles made of steel. "Let the record show," the lead attorney began, "that Mr. Jeon Jungkook is testifying under full knowledge that false statements may be prosecuted." Jungkook didn't blink, understood. "Mr. Jeon," the lawyer said, packing slowly, "when did you first become aware that your creative content, namely your lyrics, were being tampered with?" Jungkook swallowed. "The night of the show, when I looked at the file before going on stage and something felt wrong." "But you performed those lyrics anyway." "No," he said firmly. "I rewrote them in the final minutes, you know that. The version I performed was mine." "But the leak was never mine to begin with," Jungkook cut in. "It was planted. You've seen the security footage. You've seen the files Yi Hyun tried to erase." There was a stir in the courtroom, a low buzz of whispered breath. The attorney's eyes narrowed. "So you're claiming full victimhood. You had no role in provoking the situation that has spiraled into a global scandal." Jungkook leaned forward, his voice steady. "I never claimed to be innocent, but I didn't exploit anyone. I didn't manipulate systems. I didn't monetize pain." The attorney tried to push further, but the judge raised a hand. "Let's move on." Next to be called was Jimin. He walked to the stand with measured steps, his posture straight, expression unreadable. Jungkook's eyes followed him the whole way. "Park Jimin," the lawyer began. "Do you acknowledge this voicemail as yours?" "Yes." "You were aware it was being recorded?" "No." "Then why leave it on a shared system?" Jimin paused. "Because I wasn't thinking about public exposure. I was breaking. I needed someone to hear it. I thought maybe he would." "Do you regret it?" Jimin's gaze flicked to Jungkook, soft, full of bruised nostalgia. "No, I regret the silence that followed." There was a long pause. The courtroom wasn't breathing. "Were you in a romantic relationship with Mr. Jeon at the time of the voicemail?" "Yes." Gasps, shudders. The judge banged the gavel once, warning. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. And yet no documentation of this relationship existed in the company's knowledge base. Jimin turned slowly, deliberately. "Because love isn't a form you submit." The silence was deafening. After the session, the press surged forward. Security had to form walls of bodies to protect Jungkook and Jimin as they were escorted out. Reporters shouted. "Is the relationship ongoing? Do you blame the company for the manipulation? Will you continue as BTS?" Jungkook paused only once to say into the fray, "We'll speak when it's time." Later that night, they stood together in the rooftop of their old rehearsal building. Rain again. Always rain when something changed. Jimin leaned against the railing, shivering slightly in his jacket. "Do you ever wonder," he murmured, "what it would have been like if we had told them everything from the start?" Jungkook moved beside him. "We would have been torn apart." "We were anyway. But now we're still standing." Jimin turned to him. "I hated you for a while, you know." "I hated you too," Jungkook admitted. "For not calling, for disappearing." Jimin nodded. "I wanted to disappear, not from you, just from the noise, from being someone people think they own." "I know," Jungkook whispered. They stood there, breathing together, the storm below them, the past behind them. "You think they'll forgive us?" Jimin asked. "Some already have," Jungkook said. "Some never will." "But you'd do it all again." Jungkook met his eyes. "If it meant I'd still find my way back to you, every time." Jimin closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he stepped closer. "Then let's stop running." Jungkook didn't move. "Are you sure?" "No," Jimin whispered, his hand reaching for Jungkook's. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe alone." Jungkook took his hand, fingers interlocking. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Their silence spoke louder than their song. But in a dim-lit office 2 floors below, a junior manager opened an anonymous email. Subject line: "If you thought the leak was the end, You haven't seen the contract. Attached was a PDF. And at the bottom, a signature. Jeon Jungkook. Next to it, in faint red, Amendment Clause 17, property of HYBE Entertainment. And just like that, the truth cracked again. Because someone still owned the story. A storm had settled over Seoul again, but this time, it wasn't just in the clouds. The leaked contract amendment exploded across the media by sunrise. The clause, buried, nearly invisible, claimed that any lyrical, conceptual, or visual content created during Jungkook's solo career remained the legal property of HYBE Entertainment, regardless of authorship, including the rewritten lyrics from the performance that had changed everything. Including the truth. Jungkook sat in silence in the office conference room, the printout of the contract gripped tightly in his hand, edges fraying under the pressure of his fingers. Across from him, Namjoon stared at the same page with a cold fury in his eyes. They buried it, Namjoon said quietly. Clause 17, hidden in an amendment signed years ago when you renewed your deal. I never saw it, Jungkook murmured. They slipped it in. That's what they do, Yoongi said from the corner, arms folded. They wait until you're tired, overworked, ready to sign anything just to get out of the room. Jimin stood near the window, his hands trembling at his sides. It means the lyrics, they own them, Jungkook said. No, Jimin said sharply. They own the file, not the moment, not the feeling, not you. The door opened and Seo Hyun entered, flanked by two company lawyers. She was calm now, cool as polished marble. You've made your statement, she said. You've stirred enough chaos, but this is business. You don't win here with emotion. You win with ink and law. Jungkook stood slowly. You tried to erase us with contracts. You turned our pain into PR, but you forgot something. Seo Hyun raised an eyebrow. And what's that? He stepped forward, every word steel. We're not idols anymore. We're people with voices, and voices don't sign away their truth. Her expression faltered, just for a second. I'll go public with everything, Jungkook said. The emails, the footage, the manipulation, the forced silence. You might own a file, but you can't own what I meant. And if you try to sue, you'll be dragging yourself into a war with millions of fans who now know what you are. Seo Hyun's mouth tightened. This will destroy your future. Jimin moved to stand beside Jungkook, his voice calm and clear. No, it will rebuild it. They walked out together, past the glass doors, past the lawyers, past every wall that had once caged them. That afternoon, the story broke. Not through the media. Through them. Jungkook released a documentary-style video, raw and unfiltered. Behind-the-scenes footage, late-night voicemails, archived clips of laughter that had once been secret. He included the contract clause, explained it line by line. Jimin added his voice, his journey from silence to defiance. It wasn't a scandal anymore. It was a revolution. And the fans, they didn't flinch. They can't own us. Truth is not a contract. Kookmin forever. HYB tried to threaten legal action. They dropped it within a week. Too much fire, too much love, too much truth. Months passed. The media moved on. But the fans didn't. Jungkook and Jimin went quiet, not in fear this time, but in peace. They stepped away from the stage, not forever, but just long enough to remember who they were without the lights. One evening, in a quiet corner of Jeju Island, they sat by a cliff edge, watching the sun fall into the sea. No cameras, no fans, just them. You ever miss it? Jimin asked softly. Sometimes, Jungkook said, but not the way I thought I would. Jimin glanced at him. You think they'll forget? Jungkook smiled, fingers brushing Jimin's. They'll remember the truth, not the headlines, not the leaks, the moment. Jimin leaned his head on Jungkook's shoulder. You still write. Every day. For me. Jungkook turned, pressing a soft kiss to his temple. Only you. And in that quiet, wind-touched silence, their story didn't end. It simply lived. Free.